Then said Jesus unto them, when ye have lifted up the Son of Man, then shall ye know that I am he, and that I do nothing of myself, but as my Father hath taught me, I speak these things. And he that sent me is with me. The Father hath not left me alone, for I do always those things that please him. As he spake these words, many believed on him. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And they answered him, we be Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? And Jesus answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is a servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth forever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. And I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me, because my word hath no place in you. It's interesting dialogue that's taking place here with Jesus and the Jews that have made a conversion to Christianity. They're accepting Christ. They're understanding. They're believing him on a level that they would never taught on before. And as a result of it, they're coming and gathering and hearing his teaching. And Jesus is bringing forth the word and telling them, look, I'm the Son of God. And many are believing this, and they're accepting Christ. In fact, in the word it says, and as he continued the word, they begin to believe on him. It says in verse 30, as he spake these words, many believed on him. So we find that in their society that there is a transition coming from old ways into understanding what God is really up to, and they're accepting Christ as the Son of God. And so we find a transition that's happening, but yet they come with a comment. They say, but you say we're free, but we've never been in service to any man. We've never been in bondage to anybody, which is not exactly the truth here. Because when you start searching and looking about the Jews, they were in bondage in many different places. And they're subscribing to Abraham being their father, and as a result of being Abraham's seed, they're saying we're not in bondage to any man. But at the same time, we find through the history that they were in Egyptian bondage. We find even in this time that the Romans were persecuting them. So how can they say we've not been in bondage to any man? You know, it's one thing to say you're a Christian. It's a whole different understanding that when you say it, you also walk it. Jesus is saying something here I think is very important. He says, if you stay with my word, then you're truly my disciples. And then they come up with their stuff. Well, we've never been in bondage to any man, but yet Jesus is saying, look, if there's sin in your life, then you are in bondage to sin. So you become a servant to sin. And then Jesus says this interesting thought here. He says that if you believe in me, and if you follow my words, he says, not only you'll be free, but you'll be free indeed. So the question here is jumping between being free and being free indeed. So I look at our society, and I look at Independence Day. I look at where we are today and find that there is a cost, and a cost is pricey for freedom. We've got men, women that have served in the military and have laid their life down for you and I to be able to have the freedom that we have today that becomes very precious. But there's a generation that really doesn't understand the price that has been paid for our freedom. And because we don't understand the price that's been paid for our freedom, then we can't really respect or begin to honor what others had to pay in order for us to be able to do what we're doing. Being able to have the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom to go and come, to do what we want to do. And then other nations are jealous of who we are, and they take cheap shots towards our independence or our freedom. But yet it didn't come free. It came with a cost. It came with a heavy price. And so we find that in our society, there's people that really can't understand freedom except they start talking about the cost that was made. You know, our people came into this nation and they were trying to escape the oppression and escape the issues that were coming against them to keep them from being what they needed to be and what they desired to be. And so in order for the cause, they got in their boats, they began to fight, they began to lay their lives down, and then they came to America, and we discovered America, right? Tell that to the native Indians. So what we find is someone that has been abused sometimes becomes an abuser. Because in order to justify our own life and our own actions, we have to label things differently to write our books or to tell our stories so that we can believe our own stories. So instead of calling them what they were, now to justify our actions, we now call them savages. And so we now, to justify them as being savages, we need to wipe the savages out so we can possess their land. And so we find that in every freedom there's also a bondage that begins to take place. And not just because you're free or just because some got free doesn't mean that everybody was free. We find that some were free in this nation, but because of the subjection and the enjoyment of what they were doing for us, we didn't want to get them free out of their bondage, so we kept them in their bondage. I wonder sometimes about parenting. Parenting. If you're ever wanting to see the changes, or your children begin to grow up, and you look back over what you sacrificed as a parent. I think that in order to be a good father, in order to be a good mother, in order to be a good wife, a good husband, or a good leader, it's a cost. There's a price to be paid. And there are people today that young people today that are saying, you know, I want you to be my baby's daddy and this kind of stuff, but they don't understand the cost or the price, because a decision that you make at 17, 18, 19 years old to be a good mother, you're going to find yourself when that now turns to 40 years. So Jesus says, let's get past all of the hogwash here of you saying that you're a believer, that you're saying you're a Christian, and now we're disciples of Jesus Christ. And he's saying, let time begin to pass, and we'll really find out if you are a good follower or not. So when we're looking at some of the decisions that people are making today, they're not counting the cost or the price that has to be paid in order to be a good mother. There are many times they don't know what the cost is going to be in order to be a mother. Because being a mother, a good mother, means that you're going to stick it out 40, 50 years still being a good mother, even though the daddy ain't daddy no more. That Jesus is now talking to the disciples, which are and the Jews there that have made a conversion from an old way of thinking into the proper way of thinking, from a religious standpoint to a relationship standpoint. And Jesus makes a comment to them and says, hey, time is going to tell everything, because if you follow me and if you commit yourself to me, then you're going to be free, not just free, but free indeed. So time really tells whether you're free or free indeed. You know, the pressure of life makes you respond in ways that normally you wouldn't respond. So you really find out what a person is made of when they're under pressure. It's not in the hallelujah moment or at the top of the mountain moment. It's not when everything's going right and you're able to wear your Gucci's and your purses and all these things here. But it's then in the tough times when the pressure of life comes upon you is what really begins to reveal what's inside of you. And you can be married for a long period of time, but if the marriage has been established on a flawed understanding of love, then the difficulty of making that thing work for the long period begins to rise itself up when pressure begins to come. So when finances become an issue or health becomes an issue, you find that the pressure of that causes a person to reveal what's really inside. Change will happen. It does. It's going to happen no matter how much you try to protect and how much you try to keep it. And change happens. It's going to take place. And in the midst of change, can you stay with longevity? The reality of it is Jesus is talking to the people here and he's saying, don't give me all your fluff. Don't give me all your words here. Don't give me all your slogans here. But Jesus answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is a servant to sin, and the servant abideth not in the house, but the Son abideth forever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. So Jesus is saying here, he's saying, if you're going to follow me, I'm going to make you free, but yet it's going to be in time that you're going to discover you're free indeed. Because it's the pressures of life that comes against you that makes you crack under pressure at times or causes you to have the strength to endure the hardness that might come against you. Just because you're a believer doesn't exempt you from having storms in your life. But what it does do, it gives you something that you can pull on in the midst of that storm that keeps you strong in the storm, that you don't have to go back to old ways of living. You know, there's some things that we might have done that we're not proud of. But the reality of it is, when Jesus comes into our life, the word says, old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. But I don't understand why he doesn't erase our memory of the old things. Because I don't know about you, but I still remember some of those old things. And I think he allows us to remember it because he shows us in our memory where he brought us from and where we are today. Jesus is saying, when I, the Son of Man, is lifted up, then shall ye know that I am he, and that I do nothing of myself, but as my Father hath taught me, I speak these things. He's now sharing with them what he's about to go through. He's sharing with them that there's an innocent life that's about to be taken. Now, we as Christians really don't understand completely, I think, because it would be different in our praise, it would be different in our worship if we really understood the price that was paid for our freedom. Because we never connect back to that. Independence Day, we're going to be Roman candles, rockets, bursting in air. You know, I mean, look at our song, you know, that we sing about America. And I wonder how the Native Americans, the Indians, think about our song of liberty. From sea to shining sea, the mountains, all of these things. And they're saying, that was ours before you got here. And you wrote a song about your country. This is our country. It was a sacrifice that was made for you and for me to be able to live the way we live today. And if we just understood what Jesus did for our life, Jesus is telling them everything he's about to go through. And when you lift me up, you're going to understand that I am he, and you're going to begin to believe, and you're going to be set free, and you're going to be free indeed. And through time, the pressures, the issue. In this time, there were people that were exiting Christian society. The Jews were exiting massively over and over because of the pressure. They couldn't handle the pressure. Jesus is saying, hey, you know what? Let's look at what is about to take place here. You and I have the ability to worship God and have the ability to get back in right relationship with God the Father because of what Jesus did. An innocent lamb which was slain so when you and I could experience freedom. What was the price that was paid? I'm not talking about your price that you're paying. I'm not talking about what you're having to escape from or had to go through. I'm talking about the price that Jesus paid so that you could have freedom in your life. So that you can come boldly to the throne room. So that you can make your petitions known to God and He answers your prayers. So that in the midst of the night when you're being tormented, you cry out, Jesus, and all the torment begins to leave your room. What price was paid for our healing? What price was paid for our deliverance? And there are people that understand that they have had the freedom, but they still choose to walk in oppression. If you've been liberated, if you've been set free, then why would people want to be oppressed by the devil and still allow the devil to torment them when Jesus laid His life down for us to be saved? That Jesus, the one that loves us, not the one that's trying to destroy, the one that's trying to save us, came in innocently and knowing that people would not receive Him, people would spit on Him, people would curse at Him. They would do all these things, and the reality of it is, there's a lot of people that don't understand the price that was paid. But yet we, in ourselves, we wrestle in the midst of, should I do this to please my flesh, or should I follow after Christ? Should I allow the presence of God to work in my life, or should I allow the things of the world to affect me and impact my life? I think that the question comes in is that we really don't know the price that was paid for our freedom. So we sit in a balance, teeter-tottering back and forth. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to go to church when I'm feeling bad. Then I get to feeling better. I'm going to do what I want to do. The reality of it is Jesus is saying here, look, time is going to tell really if you have a relationship or not. Jesus Christ laid His life down. The Word says that He went through death, hell, and the grave. He just didn't lay His life down. He went through hell for you. We don't know all the details because the writer in that is just giving a brief synopsis of what happened. But death, we know a little bit about the death that He went through when they beat Him before His time to walk up Golgotha's hill, holding the cross on His back. We know that based upon the way the Romans beat you back then with a cat of nine tails, that there were sharp edges that was at the end of that whip, and when they hit you, it wasn't just a hitting you, it was a ripping of the flesh. And so when we start looking at Jesus, at the price that He paid, walking up Golgotha's hill, He was dripping and drenched in dried blood, still bleeding. What kind of price did He pay? To be exposed before society, hanging on the cross. And then the soldiers making such fun of Him that instead of giving Him water, they're now giving Him vinegar. They're giving Him something in His body that wasn't tasteful, that wasn't quenching the thirst, but making Him more thirsty. And then they had enough of it and pierced His side. And what kind of price did He pay before, as He's hanging on that cross, to give up the ghost? And then we thought very comfortably they pulled Him from the cross and they gave Him a proper burial. But in that burial was a time where He went through hell. He went through death, hell, and then He experienced the grave. What actually took place in hell that He encountered in paying the price for you and I to have salvation in our heart? The loneliness of the grave, the stench of the grave. I'm not trying to get graphic here, although I am in one aspect, but the reality of it is, in order to understand the liberty that we have, let's go back and see who paid the price and what was the price for you and I to sit here today and be able to worship and to praise a God that you can't see, but a God that gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. That old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new in our life. That even though that there are principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness that's in high places, he's under our feet. The reality of it is we should be walking in a level, in a place that our worship has brought us into, that every demon in Ascension Parish begins to tremble when some church member wakes up. Why should we take for granted the price that was paid and live like the devil when we should be living like Christ?